CSCC Instructor Meredith Sellers. My experiences with disability services.
Okay. I teach anatomy and physiology. I'm in the Department of Biological and Physical Sciences in the Arts and Science Division. As a faculty member, I have worked with many students that qualify for a variety of disability services. Everything from interpreting to I've worked with several students that were blind. I've had students with learning disabilities and basically learned how to not only perfect my teaching from meeting the needs of all my students, whether they're disability services or not, but also how to connect with them on making sure they know what opportunities they have to utilize the services that they qualify for disability services.
The importance of self-advocacy for students.
The biggest thing is to never feel like they can't approach a faculty member. Every faculty member is aware of disability services and our requirements from an instructor perspective, that they should always feel comfortable to go to that faculty member to get them the verification form to let them know what they qualify for. And really, never are they going to be asked about why they qualify for disability services, but I will ask students based on what their form says they're allowed to have or they qualify for, what they feel is necessary. So for example, I may have a student that qualifies for a note-taker notebook, but then they'll say to me, you know what, I'm good with not having that. I think I'm going to try to take my notes on my own. But I'll always tell the student, if you at some point decide, you know what, I've been trying to take them on my own, but I'm not doing a very good job or I'm not being successful in the course, don't feel that you can't then ask for something that you qualify for that maybe you didn't start out in the semester utilizing. I do require, and most faculty will ask, that they provide the paperwork within a timely manner. For my courses, I tell them I want that information by the end of the second week. And really, that's self-advocating, not to feel embarrassed that you qualify for those services, but I want to know what I can do from my perspective, so I need them to present that form to me and then generate a discussion. And I'm not going to ask them in front of the class. If they hand me the paper at the beginning of class, oftentimes what I'll say is, you know, can you stay after class for a couple minutes or can you come see me during my office hours? And then I'll generate that discussion with them. And to be honest with you, when it comes time for the second exam, let's say they took the first exam and maybe they didn't perform what they had hoped and they didn't take advantage of all the resources, I may ask them to come visit me again and say, you know what, let's try some of these things that maybe you didn't utilize before that may be helpful. So I think it's important that they are self-advocates, that the faculty member are never going to frown upon that. Some may be more proactive than others. I'm very proactive about it. Other people may not react until they get that paper physically, so never be afraid to present that as timely and as quickly as they can. I can honestly say some have sent it by email and never had a conversation with me about it, which I don't prefer. I've had some that hand it to me at the beginning of class, and then I've had many, probably, if you ask me what my preference is and what I've probably seen the most, is a student that waits after class that may walk with me back to my office or even show up during one of my office hours and just say, okay, here's my accommodation form. And then that lends for them to, again, not give me the reason why they qualify it, but maybe to give me some background as to what they've used in the past, starting out with a game plan individually that them and myself can discuss versus just general tips and things like that. So when we talk about self-advocacy and making sure that you work with disability services, it is very important from a faculty perspective that you have to schedule your exams in many cases. Please communicate that with faculty members. We're kind of scattered at times and teaching 5 or 6 different classes, and we have different disability services students in different classes. Always follow up. Just because you've given that form at the beginning of the semester, don't just assume that the faculty member will, take it to the testing center. This is the day that I'm scheduled for my exam. Is that okay with you? In certain cases, for example, I teach an 8 a.m. class. Well, disability services doesn't open sometimes earlier for them to take the exam and then come to my lecture that follows. So we communicate and we say, okay, let's take it the day before, let's take it after class. But don't just assume because you've given that form that the instructor has it all mapped out for the semester. Keep those lines of communication open so they can get your exam there delivered on time and that you have all the things that you need.
When should students approach me to discuss accommodations?
My preference would be either after class or probably what I would prefer the most, which in all honesty doesn't always happen, is during office hours, because I really feel that even after class, sometimes there's other students that may hang out trying to ask me a question, And I want to be as protective of that information. You know, I don't want to disclose or say anything or let other students know if they don't want them to know that they qualify for that particular service. So to do it one-on-one in the office hours would be probably the absolute best scenario. But I will say with that, I've been at Columbus State now for 10 years, and never once have I had a situation where other students judged in any way a student that qualifies for disability services. You know, to be realistic, they're going to know, for example, if they take their test at disability services, well, Mary's always in lab and class, and then when we take a test, Mary's never here. Nobody asks any questions. Everybody's very respectful of that. So, you know, I don't want anybody to feel that if they utilize those services that the other students are going to judge them, because they're not.
At times I may ask you.
I will often ask them. It depends on how early in their career. Most of the courses I teach are kind of later courses, so they've already been on campus and probably utilize the services in other courses. So sometimes I will just flat out ask them, okay, what do you know that you have used regularly and you found to be beneficial? So I kind of will generate a discussion with them. We work in laboratory groups quite often, so a lot of times I'll ask them about working with others. Again, it's not that they have to disclose it with others, but sometimes I try to link them up with other student resources so that they know, okay, I'm willing to provide whatever I can, but sometimes there are things that they can get from their group activities as well.
Speaking with your parents.
I think the biggest thing is understanding that I cannot disclose any information other than what would be printed, say, in the directory on campus when it comes to that student. So I cannot provide grades. I can't even give progress to say they're passing or they're failing. You know, so if a parent approaches me about that, while I understand from a parent perspective I want to help them, legally I'm not able to do that. So just to know that if you approach a faculty member and you don't get the response, that's the reason why. I will say that there are circumstances. I work with some scholarship students, and their scholarships are based upon their academic performance. So there have been situations where if they sign a waiver, then the parent can be involved in that discussion, let's say if they're put on a probation from that scholarship or things like that. So it has happened, but again, the student has to sign that waiver in order for me to be involved. And I think I get emails sometimes and people will think, well, I didn't ask on the telephone, you know, maybe I can get the information, but whether it's email or phone, or even if a student comes in for extra help or wants to discuss a grade for me, or if I'm giving an exam back for them to review, as the parent, I can't have them in the room because, again, that's giving specific information. The student can share information with them, and, you know, that's a discussion between parent and child, but I would encourage them to utilize the student to get all that information versus the faculty.
My advice for future CSCC students.
I think first and foremost, to visit disability services, to look at the qualifications or the accommodations that they qualify for, and be open to trying things that they maybe didn't try when they were in high school. And I know, just like I said, there's certain things that people qualify for that they don't utilize. I understand that. But even if you hadn't tried it in high school, college level academic work is so different that even if you didn't have somebody helping with note taking, when somebody flies at a pace that's 3 times the speed you're used to in high school, it may be a great thing for you to try that resource. So my big advice is, if you qualify for something, try them all. You never know. You may really find that one of them is 10 times more helpful than you had expected it to be. So don't just look at that or think, oh, let me try it without, and then play catch up in a course that's very challenging to do. I would rather see a student start out doing everything they possibly can and then saying, you know what, maybe I will get rid of this or get rid of that and try just these options rather than trying to pick them up at the end.
The knee.